All right, welcome back, everyone, to Coffee and UFOs, two of my favorite things. Yeah, Steve, I'm glad I've got you on because we had the UAP hearing recently. But just real quick, for everyone who doesn't know Stephen Bassett, he is the executive director of Paradigm Research Group, founded in 1996 to end a government-imposed embargo on the truth behind the so-called UFO phenomena. Stephen has spoken to audiences around the world about the implications of formal disclosure by world governments of an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. And you can find out about him and all his work at paradigmresearchgroup.org. This episode of Coffee and UFOs and all episodes are rebroadcast on the UNX network every Thursday night at 11 p.m. Pacific time, 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you enjoy these episodes and if you love Coffee and UFOs as much as I do, please follow me on Instagram at Paranormal Now and on Threads at Paranormal Now as well. And this is where I'm going to be posting most of the show updates. Steve, we have a lot to unpack, but before we break down the actual hearing yesterday, a quick question for you. As we're transitioning from the Biden administration to a Trump administration,
right?
Does that in any way incentivize Biden to rush to disclosure?
It's not quite that simple. I've been doing already a bunch of interviews. I've got a bunch more. I think I've got 17 scheduled deliberately for after the hearing. Here's how I describe where we're at right now. We made a lot of progress on this issue, heading towards what could be disclosure, wrapping it up.
Mm-hmm.
But the last piece to the issue last puzzle was the Senate had to have a hearing. Everybody knows the Senate was leading this. The Senate's the very Intel committee is a very powerful committee. It was members of the Senate writing the legislation. Rubio, Gillibrand. So we need to have that hearing, and it would be substantive, would be large. It would be like the Nixon situation, where they really had to have a major publicly viewed hearing regarding Nixon's problems in order to be able to go up and ask him to resign. Without that hearing, I don't think they could have done it. This is sort of like that, only much more important. So that was it. We just need the hearing in front of the Senate. They had a chance. They could have done it late last year, but they chose not to. There is, of course, a lot happening in the world. It's very chaotic. They still had an opportunity early this year, but they still didn't do it. Again, there's a lot happening. And of course, every week closer to the election, things are getting more and more intense. So ultimately, at some point, it was simply too late. Fine. So there's not going to be a hearing in front of the Senate before the election. And I get that, because this is a big deal. And for them, it's a distraction from what they would probably view the most important election of their life. That's all I heard. And so maybe it is. And I'm sure they thought they were going to win it, or hope they'd win it.
Yeah, no, I think they did. I think they believed that. Yeah.
And so we didn't get the hearing. Then we had the election. And the Democrats lost the Senate and lost the White House, and the Republicans kept the House. So now it's a Republican-held government. Okay. So here's the good news. The election is over, and it's people can now settle back. They're not going to have to run for 2 more years. They don't have to go out and raise, well, at least not for a while, umpteen $1 million. And you can maybe consider other things. And one of the things they considered was a hearing in the House. And so Nancy Mace went to great trouble to get a hearing together. Great job.
And she asked excellent questions too.
They all did. The House Republicans are leading on this issue, and the Senate is nonpartisan. The Senate Intel is pretty nonpartisan, but they didn't. I don't think they realized how significant the efforts by the House were, and they were set up to be able to follow suit and really make history. But they didn't do it. Nancy Mace is not going to wait for the Senate. She's held another hearing. Now, she had to work hard to do that, and she had trouble getting witnesses.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that later, but that's done. And it's advanced the issue even further. Now, there's 40 plus witnesses ready to testify before the Senate tomorrow. I think they need to pay their travel and their hotel bills, but yeah. So one way this can go is this, and it is the way I prefer, not for partisan reasons, really, believe it or not, definitely not for partisan reasons, is that there is more than enough time for the Senate to hold the hearing, the one that ends this. 20 witnesses, as I've said, should be enough. Selected from 40 or more. Think 6, 7, 8 David Grushes. All right. And they would testify 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. That's about 3 hours each. That's 6 hours a day. This hearing was 2. Multiply that. That's 30 hours of hearings. Okay. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the week, the truth embargo would be literally shattered. There would be nothing left of it.
Do you think it's a critical mass effect?
Absolutely. Well, it's critical mass. Absolutely. Plus, this hearing, heavily promoted, would be seen by millions and millions of people. And so this is a big deal. Again, very similar to the Nixon thing, right? Only 1,000 times, 10,000 times more important.
Yeah.
So they can do it. They have plenty of time. As it happens, Gillibrand has said this going to have a hearing on the 19th. As far as we know, there's only going to be one witness. We have no idea, but technically it's in play. But a one-day hearing on the 19th is nothing. But that could be expanded to a 5-day. I may try to talk to somebody in that office, but I don't know how that goes. But whatever, that's where we are. There is no question the Senate could pull together that hearing, and these witnesses will be happy to come, take an oath, and tell Grush-like stories from one end to the other. And that sets up Biden to be able to come forward late November, maybe early December, and say in a responsible way, this hearing completely confirms to me that we have this. We're not alone. I've consulted with some of my top officials and aides, and they agree. And I'm telling you now that we are not alone. We have non-human bodies, and obviously you want to know more. And I'm sure that the new president, the new presidential administration, is going to help you get that more. He may plug the UAP disclosure bill, whatever, and that's it. We've got disclosure. Now, the reason that this is the best way to go is, what does that mean? It means that by the time the new president takes office, we're already weeks into the post-disclosure world. Every major head of state has already confirmed it, right? People all over the world are excited. And everybody's thinking about what's going to happen next and so forth. But the fundamental job, the fundamental prize has been achieved after 77 years. And then the new president comes into office, and that's done. Got the legislation, got AARO, got all the stuff. And then the new president can then address the post-disclosure world that is now underway. This is a lot easier gig. The next president is going to face a huge array of problems. And that's on top of whatever political stuff is going on. All right. And so this is just one less thing the president got to deal with. In other words, it hangs over the head above the next administration. Are you going to do it, not do it? What's going on? People are wanting disclosure, yada, yada, yada. That's done. And Joe Biden does get a gift on the way out, of substantial legacy of sorts. But he's not going to run again. He's not going to be a political power. The next president, Donald Trump, will be essentially the first president to engage the post-disclosure world, a non-trivial historical reality.
Do you think if Marco Rubio is Secretary of State, that is a signal? No,
I can't say. I mean, it's not surprising he got that job, but I don't think it necessarily means anything. Yeah, he did pass the first legislation, but then after the Senate went back to Republicans, he really stepped back and others took over. So I don't, I don't like to read stuff in unless it's really strong. Don't see it. Who knows? What's important, of course, is that as I say, it's best for the Senate to do it now. Now, if that doesn't happen, then here's the next situation. It's simple. The new administration takes over. Now, most of the hard work is done. The UAP Disclosure Act could be resubmitted at any time as a standalone bill and passed in early December, assuming the Republican Senate would pass it. It is a nonpartisan bill. The whole issue is nonpartisan. Everybody agrees to that. And in the next administration, anything nonpartisan is an asset for everybody concerned. All right. It is not easy being a member of Congress or a president in this hyper partisan, intense environment that we have created that we can't seem to get out of. It's brutal. Yeah. So you've got this huge nonpartisan issue that allows people to come together. And so I don't see, there's two ways it can go. The president could encourage the new Intelligence Committee chairman to get the witnesses in, get them in. Let's have this done. Bring in 20. Let's hold a week of hearings and get this out. It'll be covered. It'll be fantastic media, fantastic press. And then once it's done, the new president will be the one that steps out in the East Wing and proclaims that the testimony is clear. We're not alone. We have, and even have tech and bodies and things like that. And a whole lot needs to be presented to the people. And the UAP Disclosure Act, hopefully, is the tool that's going to do it. It's comprehensive. It'll get the job done. And bingo, we're in the post-disclosure world. And here's why I think it could happen in the first 60 days.
Okay.
Which puts us late March latest, is that, and this is interesting. It's interesting that President-elect Trump has been asked more questions about UFOs than any other president. That includes Obama, that includes Clinton, and Clinton got into this issue, right?
Yeah.
But still, he didn't get that many interviews to ask this question.
It's also a different time. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. So there's that. He's always answered the questions. He doesn't elaborate. His answers tend to be casual.
He seems a little uninterested.
Well, uninterested. There was some of that could have been interpreted that way. So, but we know that. And so what? But as we got close to the election, he went a little further, and the definitive, I think, interview was Rogan. So Rogan brings it. Rogan knows a lot about the subject. He's had plenty of UFO, UAP people on. Sure. I haven't gotten the call yet, but I'm ready to answer. And he asked him about this issue, and Trump said, "I'm going to release the UK files, and I'm going to release the UFO files." That's pretty strong. Didn't elaborate. Same deal. So essentially, he's teed himself up. However, in the news, you can find that some of the people around him are referring to this. It's in play with some people near to him. And then because of that, the UK papers now, it's probably going to start crossing the pond here. But about 7 or 8 articles came out right away about Trump's going to disclose, because the UK papers can be a little aggressive. And so that puts it into play. That crosses the Atlantic. We start seeing some of those stories. And so, frankly, I see the next president being teed up to do it. It doesn't say how he would do it, but it's teeing him up. And here's the last point. This is a president that'll do whatever the hell he wants to do. The DOD may say, don't do it. The secretary, some other agency, we'd rather you didn't do it. He's going to say, I'm going to do it. I don't care what you want. And so he just doesn't have the strictures that Biden has. He doesn't have the strictures that Obama had. I think Hillary Clinton would have been the disclosure president, but you got to win first. And so, again, there's a very strong possibility that it happens in the early weeks of the Trump administration, and that's my projection. But beyond March, I can't go.
What would be the difference between his first and second term? I mean, what would have changed that Trump would want to bring about disclosure now and not have done it the first time?
Good point. He was asked a couple of things leading into that election, but not too much. Yeah,
I'm just looking for those signs of curiosity or,
no, I'm not saying that this is a big issue for him in his life. No. And as of the first election, I don't think it was a big thing. He asked a couple of questions, pretty casual response. And when he took over as president, well, let's just say that the political situation was rather intense.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen. But since then, and let's be clear, since he left office, right? I'm going to have to get this right now. See, come here, 21.
Well, we've had David.
No, not quite. He leaves office in January 25. No, I'm sorry. What the hell am I thinking? He leaves office in January 20, right? January 21. Since then, There have now been 2 hearings in front of the House Oversight Subcommittee. The Grush thing has exploded. There's been huge about the media coverage, right? We just obviously had another hearing. The issue is advanced substantially during those years, but not enough for Biden to step in. But still, a lot has happened. A huge amount of media. I logged in last year 1,800 articles in mainstream media about this issue. I'm up to 1,000 this year, so that's 2,800 articles in the last, I don't know, approximately 21 months. So it's a different time, and it's not so much a matter whether he is interested or not. He may or may not be, but at some point, one of his advisors, if it hasn't happened already, is going to take him aside based upon everything that's happened in the last 4 years and point out to the president that if he were to service this issue, if he would, say, encourage the Republican chair of the Intel Committee to do the hearing everybody's been wanting, or unilaterally, which is not the way to go. It would be, it would probably be better to get that hearing first. But this is Donald Trump. End the truth embargo. Formal confirmation of the ET presence, non-human intelligence on this planet. It will be one of, if not the greatest political legacy, or it'll be one of the greatest political achievements of any leader in the history of the human race.
Honestly, I thought Hillary would have done it.
I think she would have.
She was the first one to actually publicly really use the term UAP.
I'll take a lot of responsibility for that. There's a whole story there. I'm happy to relate to any newspaper or network wants to talk. Well, yeah, I was in the middle of that whole thing. Others were as well. Okay. But 400 articles were written about her connection to the UAP issue during her campaign. And I'm responsible for about 70% of those. Okay. 400 articles were written about that issue, which mentioned me and PRG during that period. Whatever. The point is that she didn't win.
Well, but I mean, this is your life's passion. This is your life's passion. I absolutely believe that. I know you are an activist. This is what you do, and you're pushing that agenda, which is fantastic. So let's go back to the hearing from yesterday. I just wanted to pick one piece of minutia from it. There was a question about the eminent domain that was removed from last year's National Defense Authorization Act, the amendment to Yeah. So
that came up. The eminent domain was mentioned yesterday in that hearing.
Yeah, I forget.
I've got to go watch it. I'll tell you. Here's the problem. I was in the audience. I'm in the 4th row back. It's awful. The members do not speak into their microphones. They got the microphones there, and they don't realize we're not hearing in the audience. They talk very fast, and so it was really terrible. I'm like this the whole time. I missed a lot, and obviously I missed that eminent domain remark because I would have noted that. But I understand the people that watched it, like on C-SPAN, because they got their own special mics.
Yeah, you can hear clear.
So maybe I should have watched that first before I did this show, but I guess I'm going to watch it later tonight.
Okay,
so what's your question about eminent domain?
So the question is, what's your take on that? Is that, like, we're a free society, capitalism. Is that actually the wrong thing to do, to include that? I understand the purpose of it, but does that open the gates to, well, if we got eminent domain for extraterrestrial materials that any private company is holding, and then we can take them by law, or you have to return them by law, doesn't that open up the floodgates to the government having a little too much power in that regard? Or is it a positive?
Well, let's see. Boy. Ultimately, if the bill had passed with eminent domain, that doesn't mean that it's not going to get challenged. In other words, when the time comes and the government decides that they want a couple of saucers to mount on the White House lawn, the contractor will probably immediately go to court and might fight it for years, take it to the Supreme Court. So it's not a done deal, but he's claiming that eminent domain is part of the act. It would actually probably would go all the way to the Supreme Court. So it's not like they're having to give the stuff up. But do we have to have an eminent domain clause to get disclosure? Absolutely not.
Okay.
Do I really care? No. It's way more complicated than just should we have it or not have it. However, and I'd love to be able to sit down and ask him this, but these are smart people in the Senate. Particularly Chuck Schumer is no dummy, and I have this suspicion that he deliberately stuck that in there, right? And here's why. The bill itself, without eminent domain, is fantastic. It's everything we wanted, okay? But I'm sure he thought it won't pass, right? It's too much. It's got it all, but it won't pass. But just submitting the bill is a big deal. It got a tremendous amount of attention. So it advances the disclosure, just the submission of the bill. So it's a contribution. And of course, you can always negotiate down. So, but by putting eminent domain in it, I think he knew that the defense contractors were just not going to pass on that.
Yeah.
He knew that that was going to really shake up the troops. And what happened is exactly what you would expect to happen. The contractors went to their lobbyists and other representatives and really for the first time, because they never say anything, right? Really. Well, very little. Ben Rich used to tease us with these little bum homes about we can take ET home, which I really was not a fan of that stuff. You know, you got ET stuff. Tell us. Don't tease us with that crap. Right. We're not your children, Ben. So anyway, he knew that they might react, and they did. And so they hired these people to reach out to the appropriate entities who have a lot of influence over the conference committee, and they said, "Get that out of there." Well, they did more than that. They stripped the domain out, and they stripped all the other powers and left basically the concept of the bill there, with some, I mean, and including the fact that an archive needed to be set up. It was, and some stuff needed to start coming after so much. It is. It's nothing much, but it's starting, so it's real. So the bill is not nothing. It's something, but basically they protected their own. Yeah. Well, guess what? Not surprisingly, we found out. Didn't take long. We found out. And so the internet just ripped it. And so what he accomplished something clever. I mean, he's playing three-dimensional chess. They're playing regular chess. He forced their hand. He forced the contractors to come out and defend their ET tech. By doing so, that confirms there's ET tech. And so in one stroke, by putting that in the bill, he confirms Grush, which takes a lot of pressure off of him. And he's not anybody. He's the Senate majority leader. And the same thing, he forces the contractors to come push back at it. That confirms Grush, confirms we have ET tech. Sure. And so before anything else happens, this is a big deal. Okay. Plus, people got up in arms, it galvanized people and so forth. But ultimately, it was stripped out and the bill passes.
Do you think yesterday's hearing can have a similar effect in any way?
No. That maneuver was huge.
Meaning, you know, the sort of pointing of fingers. I mean, I have to say, Lou got pretty close. I mean, he was, and I know he has to be careful about what he says, but I mean, they made it all very clear that the DOD, the Pentagon, is in possession of knowledge about extraterrestrial UAP.
Well, he said that in interviews. Grush said it. I mean, there's not.
Yeah, but now it's under oath. You know.
Well, it was under oath with Grush. Look, what he's doing, he it's not new, but he's reinforcing. He's reinforcing the fundamental truth. We have ET tech, ET bodies. So fine, I expected that perfectly okay, and others. But okay. So what was I saying before?
Well, what was your biggest takeaway from this? Like, what was the most important?
There were a number of things that struck me. One, the enthusiasm of the people. Oh, this is huge. It was electric. Everybody was talking. All these podcast. I mean, people with cameras taking stuff. Everybody's filming everybody. Some star like or James Fox would walk in. Everybody's coming up to him, getting selfies. Right? He's happy. Everybody's happy. It was intense. Okay, that was nice. Like that. I got in the room with Bob Salas, who came specifically to get in that room, and I had some tricks up my sleeve. I helped a number of people get in, but we had to get outside the Longworth building about 5 a.m. Some people were there at 3 a.m. It was about 33 degrees. It was painful. 2 hours outside and then 4.5 hours inside, but whatever. And when we got in, there were only about 20 seats left. So even with that, we barely made it. Anyway, so there was great energy, great enthusiasm, every bit, if not greater than the hearing with Grush. Mm-hmm. So I noted that. That's all good. Then another thing that struck me was this. This did not happen in the first hearing. The members came in and they took their chairs. Mm-hmm. Okay. And once most of them were sat, then the witnesses came in from the right side on the, obviously the congressional side where the congressional members are. They came in, and as they walked to the table, everybody starts applauding. The entire audience. Okay, interesting. And this time, I don't think it was the case last time. I haven't checked yet. Maybe it was, but C-SPAN was filming this. So was Scripps News. So was the YouTube channel for the committee, and maybe some other venues. Plus, other people were live streaming it from some source through their Twitter page. Mm-hmm. So you go to their Twitter. You go to their Twitter page, and they're live streaming it. Okay, and so all of that applause to these four men was being seen by a lot of people. This is not a small matter. It's very significant.
You could feel that energy for sure, even from home. Michael Gold, he spoke to NASA and its role that it could play in the future of UAP mm-hmm. research, but he also he did. I mean, he said that NASA is transparent, but you and I know that UFO researchers for a very long time have been saying that there are things that NASA is not sharing with us. So what was your take away from his comment there?
Okay, it's not true. NASA is often not transparent. Point one. Point two, people that are connected with NASA, they're very loyal. The astronauts and others. I mean, NASA is a big deal, and the people mm-hmm. that work for it are extremely loyal, proud. Yeah, and they don't want to do anything that hurts NASA. I remember Edgar Mitchell told me once that he came public on it, said there was ETs here, but he got a lot of grief about that, and so did Gordon Cooper, and he got a lot of grief. But other astronauts know, and it was along the lines of, look, this agency gave them the opportunity to go into space, even to the moon, and the idea that they're going to throw shade on NASA by spilling the beans about or giving views that are contrary to NASA's position, no. So they're proud, and so this was a statement regarding an agency I think that he had great affection for. So there's that. And in general, he was there because he could speak about NASA. He has a varied background. Mm-hmm. But the witness they wanted, of course, was the anonymous witness that talked to Shellenberger. Right. The DOD reached out to Mace in one way or another and said, we'd rather you didn't do that.
Yeah.
Don't bring in that witness. In fact, they went further and said, we don't even want Immaculate Constellation mentioned. And Mace just told him to go pound sand.
Oh, they said it. They said it on purpose multiple times.
Oh yeah, no. He made it clear, and she joked about, well, I guess I'm on a list now.
Exactly.
Right? And she's quite a woman.
But what are you going to do? I mean, it was an article printed publicly in the first place by Shellenberger. I mean, it's on the lips of 1 million people now. It's out there. Yeah.
Yeah, but this was a unacknowledged special access program.
Yeah.
Grush did not refer to an unacknowledged special access program. He just referred to a special access program, I believe, but I could be wrong. But nevertheless, it's an unacknowledged special access program, and it's coming from an anonymous source. Grush was a known entity. He'd gone to the Inspector General's office. They knew all about it. They know that he was unhappy. They didn't, I don't think, expected him to go to the media and be a whistleblower, but it was no shock. This is out of nowhere. You got somebody, you don't know who it is. We don't know where he got the source, right? The documents are clearly unclassified, and he's putting that out there. So they were not happy. And so I thought maybe Mace would go play ball. She didn't. So that is now in play. Now, this is very interesting because there's no pressure that's going to be put on who I like to refer to now as Congressman Nancy Hell or High Water Mace, that is going to change her mind. But they had to try. And what does that mean? Does that mean that there's no such program? If there's no such program, they're not going to bother her, not going to call her up, right? They're not threaten her in any way. It would be ridiculous. In fact, if this was a concoction by somebody that fooled Shellenberger, they want that in. They want that in the hearing so bad, because it'll be out there. It'll be debunked, and it just throws shade over everything. It's exactly what they wanted. And so essentially, they had no choice. Well, they could have just shut up, but they confirmed this is a real unacknowledged special access program that is now hanging over the truth embargo like a sword, right? Ready to drop. What can I say? So again, we keep winning in this chess game. We are we won the game, but I mean, it's made in so many moves. It's just a question of how many moves.
And well, you said they confirmed it. How indirectly they confirmed it?
They confirmed it because if it is not true, if it's made up, you're not going to threaten a congressperson and tell him not to bring it up in a hearing.
But you're talking about the Pentagon? Do you, like
the Pentagon?
Okay.
And I think there was some pressure put on by one or more senators. You're not going to put pressure on somebody to not include something in a hearing that's completely false. And the point I'm making is that a false, a bogus, made-up story appearing in a hearing would be perfect for the Pentagon and its desire to keep this thing embargoed indefinitely. It would blow up in the face of the movement. It would be a huge embarrassment.
Yeah.
And so common sense says, obviously, it has to be true. So they confirmed it. Just like the defense contractors basically confirmed there was non-human tech when they demanded that the eminent domain that was put in the bill to be able to access the non-human tech was a bother.
So Shellenberger, he mentioned, I think it was him that mentioned sort of debunking the circular reporting thing. My takeaway, maybe I misunderstood, was that because his source was someone different, someone outside of the usual names and faces. Did I read that right?
Well, unknown as well. And there's another thing. There's only been 4 UAP hearings, 66 and 68. Then 55 years go by and we have 2 more. It's interesting. It's kind of like a nice balance, right? A reporter has never been at one of those hearings. He's the first journalist to ever appear in a UAP hearing. And this confused some people because he has a whole different set of criteria. There are reasons why former national security people with clearances and so forth can't say this and can't say that. That's not the same for Shellenberger. He's not limited by any national security directives or classification. He is limited by the ethics of journalism. He's not allowed or can't be forced to reveal sources or information that leads to sources. And so when he was asked about this, he says, I can't say it. I'm sure some people were pretty irritated by that. Perfectly appropriate. So again, it's possible the DOD doesn't know who this is, which is going to drive them nuts. Who is it? Does he have more documents? What's going on here? That's the kind of thing they really don't like. That is far more problematic to them than Grush was.
Well, and he wouldn't even get specific as to say even the Pentagon. He just said government.
And another point that some people missed, but it did come up. He did not give them the documents. He gave them a summary of the documents. Okay.
Right.
And I think the reason for that is clear. If that gentleman had given him the actual documents, his security violation level just went up even higher, right? Now, this guy, Texaria, whatever, this game playing kid, computer game kid who was sharing secret documents with his friends on the computer game, he just got 15 years. And it's a shame, but the boy apparently did not get the proper upbringing. But the point is that it's one thing to tell a reporter that you've seen this and about this program, but to hand him the classified documents, no. And so a summary was made. He got that. I'm sure the summary would convince anybody at DOD that, oh yeah, those are the docs. And so that was a little confusing. Some people missed on that. Again, that's another loss for the DOD. They're not winning. They're not winning much these days.
Yeah, no, and it's really interesting. It goes into to detail. I mean, this was clearly studied, right? I mean, you have the size, speed, signatures of all these different types of crafts. It breaks it down in these charts, and it's not unlike sometimes reading like a MUFON report. It's with the descriptions. It's fascinating, and it was interesting to see the congressman like entertained by it in a way. They were asking questions about the shapes of the crafts and the performances, and it was interesting because us it's not new, but to them it was a new. It
Sure.
was more. It was more. It wasn't just this anomalous UAP idea, some black and white video. Now these Congress people are starting to have like some color and some details and the depth of knowledge about these things, and I think that's really actually important, and people don't realize that
It
they
is
need that.
important, but I wouldn't go too far with that. You want to know why? There's been 2 public hearings on this issue. Over the last 4 years, there's probably been hundreds of
Hmm.
private briefings. We have no idea how many members of Congress have talked to how many people, either individually or in groups. But there's been a learning curve going on privately in the background. That's the way it works. And then as they learn more and more, they decide what they're going to do in a public setting. Obviously, Mace, Luna, Burchett, and Gates and others have decided, okay, let's rock, let's go. They wouldn't have done that if they didn't have other briefings. Some of the most important briefings went to the Intel Committee staff, and the Armed
Hmm.
Services, Senate, and so forth. So the level of knowledge inside, I can assure you, is far greater
Oh,
than their public statements would reflect.
yeah. I mean, even Shellenberger said himself that to his knowledge, there's at least hundreds of these, still photos, videos, of high resolution
Yeah.
that are available that people just haven't seen yet. That would clearly, this is the kind of thing that we want, that the Mick Wests out there want. Um, are we inching closer to that, to getting that now?
It's the kind of stuff that could turn up in a Senate hearing
Yeah.
if the
Okay.
intention of that hearing was to finally close out the embargo.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could go get it. I mean, there's witnesses that would blow the thing apart just on their testimony, but they can bring in some high level footage. They can go get 20 hours of 4K Primo, if they want to. In other words, the Senate has the power to end it.
Hmm.
And that power rests on the shoulders of Mark Warner, who I accidentally sat next to in a restaurant, an
Yeah.
outdoor cafe, had no idea. And he was right behind me about 1.5 feet. And the only reason I knew it is because a person I was dining with held up a photo of him on her cell phone. And I said, I can't believe it. The odds of me, just completely by accident, sitting down and being right next to Mark Warner are astronomical. And there he was. So naturally, I turned around and very politely said, excuse me, Senator, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've been involved in the UAP issue for a really long time. Here is my card. If I can ever be of help. He said, very fine, thank you. And then when he left, he acknowledged me. He went out the door. He's a fine man. Now, am I going to get to go talk to Mark Warner? I'm not going to bet any money on that.
Come on,
But
Mark.
it was kind of a message from the cosmos. Steve, you're on the right track.
No, that's cool. No, and I get really quickly back to the idea that the senators were sort of entertained by the descriptives of these craft. I think was almost performative for the public, and that's why I think it's important, because you're talking about all these more colorful aspects, phenomenal aspects of the UAP that now the public is hearing spoken of in a congressional hearing, and not just like on a History Channel, documentary.
Well, that's why you have hearings.
Yeah.
That's why you have a lot of people don't understand what hearings are about. They're about many things. They have many purposes. They're not simple. But this is pretty much along the lines of the Nixon hearings. There were major hearings regarding Richard Nixon. They were watched by millions and millions of people. The hearing room was packed, right? Without those hearings, I don't think they could have gone up to the White House and convinced Nixon to leave. But those hearings, which were seen by millions and millions of people, closed the deal. Same thing here. Millions of Americans hearing these statements under oath from serious people who have worked in government with classification status is a non-trivial thing. And every time they hear another one, it's more important. And that then sets the stage for the president to come forward. So that's a lot of what these hearings are about. Plus, reading in the record, of course, is very important, because once it's in the record, it's never going away. And they're not going to do it if they've been given a lot of information behind the scenes that says that this is all it's not going to fly, it's not good, it's not going to work, it's bogus, there's a lot of hoaxes, blah blah blah. No, that's not what they're hearing. They're getting good information, so they may, in some cases, know more about a subject than maybe the person in front of them, but probably not. But again, the level of knowledge of the Congress is far greater than what you can tell from hearing them.
Yeah. Anything else that you took away that was significant?
Oh yeah, let's see. Well, the thing that gave this hearing more power than the Grush hearing, which was powerful, no question. The Grush hearing was basically one man coming forward with a very important piece of information that reveals something significant, right? All the other stuff is, personal problems he had and whatever. That's drama, but that's not what the hearing's about. It's one person, established person, credible. It's got a very important. Graves and Fravor were brought in to sort of balance it out a little bit. They didn't have anything profound to say. They reiterated the experience they had. They gave their own views about the situation when they were asked. In a lot of cases, they didn't have an opinion. But that was totally appropriate. You did not want Grush there all by himself, alone,
of course,
facing the panel, right? No. And so, nice. So that's what it was. This was 4 people with a spectrum of high-level background, accomplishments, achievements in different areas, giving systemic testimony about a whole range of things, but a lot of the testimony reinforcing each other, right? That's powerful. Very powerful. And it's on the record. And so in a sense, while the Grush hearing was more exciting for the average person, this 4-part hearing that we just had, the 4-person hearing, is more powerful for people in government and elsewhere that are going to have to make future decisions about this issue. It sent a clear message. Okay. It's 4 today. They might get 8 tomorrow. They might get 20. And so maybe we should just cooperate, get this done, get the truth out.
Will you be disappointed if the next hearing is, say, 2 people?
Well, look, any hearing they have is good.
Okay.
Right? But let me finish. If Gillibrand simply goes ahead, as we think she's going to do, and holds a 1-person hearing on the 19th, she will have contributed not much of anything to this issue. She will have lost an opportunity. Now, it may
depend on the person. I was going to say, doesn't depend on the person, that individual, if they're someone in the upper echelon.
Look, if it's a Grush type person or whatever, it'll be interesting. But a 1-person hearing is not going to set the stage for the president. It's not enough. Okay. It's not powerful enough. And so we may have a hearing, 1 person. It's not going to be a big deal, but we're going to have a hearing. It won't set us back. But again, they've got one opportunity basically to get the hearing that ends this, to checkmates the national security structure and ends the embargo. And that's, if she's going to hold a hearing, why not do that? Now, admittedly, setting up a full week hearing and getting 20 witnesses together is not trivial. But as long as you're paying their hotel and their airfare, I assure you, you'll get them here. And they've all got to make written statements. But it's, it doesn't matter whether it's 1 or 20. You just contact all 20 and say, we need a written statement of what you would tell us in a hearing. We need it in 4 days. Yeah. And I guarantee you those statements will come in. And then you make the arrangements, book the hearing room, and off to the races we go. It's not that difficult. Now, they may have a different view of that, I assure you, and I would love to talk to them about it, but they never call me.
Do you think someone like Bob Lazar should be at a hearing? No.
A post-disclosure, there will be many, many hearings in many different committees. And he could be a lot of opportunities for a range of people to speak, and that could very well happen. But in terms of the hearing leading to disclosure, no.
No. Okay. And why would that be a bad idea?
Not strong enough. Not tight enough. Testimony.
Gotcha. Okay. I want to ask you about the new director, John Kozlowski, for AARO. I mean, he has It's quite the resume. It's interesting because he has a more of a seemingly analytical background. So he's the research director of the National Security Agency Department. Invented an advanced language agnostic search engine at the DoD Special Communications Enterprise Office. His PhD is in electrical engineering. Word on the street is that he has a different approach to the UAP phenomena than Kirkpatrick. That he might be a little bit more open-minded.
No, he has a legitimate approach. He has a legitimate approach.
Okay.
There's a high confidence. Our people are feeling good that this is good. They made a colossal blunder, and for that reason, I think they really went to get somebody very, very good. Mm-hmm. That whole history is unfortunate, and Kirkpatrick, unfortunately, was the victim. So he served for 1.5 years. He was brought in to run a program that wasn't supposed to do anything. Mm-hmm. AARO was being created not to do anything now, but to be there and ready to go when the president confirms the ET presence. It's a post-disclosure world deal. Yeah. That's the same thing for the legislation. All of this is to preparation for disclosure. The government already knows there's ETs here. And most people don't get that, and I appreciate it. So they're expecting these things to be in the context of telling us what's happening, but yet it doesn't seem that way, because it's not about that. It's about, if the president discloses on Monday, we better have a lot of our act together on Tuesday. We need legislation. We need an entity that's dealing with it. We need a UFO study program or something over at NASA. We need a lot of people on board. We need to be able to hit the ground running. And of course, they rolled the dice on that, because before they started all this preparation, a head of state somewhere else could have done it. And so maybe even the prime minister of the UK finally wakes up one day, calls a meeting, ends the truth embargo. And the next day, all the reporters are wanting to know, what have you done, Mr. President? And they haven't done anything. And so they had to do this. And so far, they've been lucky. They still have time to finish it off. That's what it was about. All right. So this was a very weird situation. You need to set up AARO, but you really don't want it to do anything. That's why they didn't give it any money. And Gillibrand was pissed off, because why aren't they giving it money? Because they don't want it to do anything. And so Kirkpatrick, whatever he thought he was getting into, or maybe whatever he was told he was getting into, but that would be resolved quickly, it didn't work out that way. And so things get stretched out. And there he is, parked at the AARO. What do I do? Right. So he's doing whatever. And I think it would have probably worked out. But then along came David Grush. So when David Grush turns up, Kirkpatrick is in an absolutely impossible position. He is now the head of AARO. Grush just says we have non-human tech and bodies. Mm-hmm. Who do you think they're going to go to next to want to know about the non-human tech and bodies? And who do you think can absolutely say nothing about it? He was in an impossible situation, and he knew it immediately. Yeah. So he didn't handle it well. He could have resigned right then and said, look, something's not right here. I'm leaving. But probably wasn't going to have a job on the other side of that. And so he chose to go defensive. So he wrote a very critical letter to about Grush and sent it to, I don't know, sent it to Senate House. Mm-hmm. Then magically Grush's medical records turned up.
Yes.
Another mistake. And so
I don't know if we can direct that towards Kirkpatrick directly.
I'm not saying it was
someone else.
I'm just saying it turned up. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so and that blew up. The letter blew up. And so he realized this is not working. The internet is way stronger and wiser than I am. And so he realized I am in an impossible situation. So he resigns. Yeah. And has another job set up. I forget where. It might have been a Department of Energy or something. A decent job. He's got a family. He's got responsibilities. Mm-hmm. No problem. So he's resigned. And he's going to leave and get out from that mess. Except, unfortunately, it wasn't over. And so what happens next is that Schumer introduces verbally, or in an interview on July the 14th of 2023, the UAP disclosure bill, the bill to end all bills that includes the eminent domain. And oh my God, everybody went absolutely nuts. And so the defense contractors and others had to attack that bill. And so they did, but it forced them out of cover. Everybody knew what was going on. They knew that this was an attempt to gut the bill because there really are ET tech, and they really have it. So in a sense, Schumer smoked them out. It was a brilliant move, and so that was a fiasco. Obviously, the internet was all over that, but they did pare the bill back and left something okay, but not with any significant powers. A win for them, but all the bad press they got and everything else was a loss. But they felt, okay, we bought some time, and then something awful happened. Chuck Schumer and Mike Rounds went into the Senate not long after that and read into the record that they weren't done. They're gonna get this done. They're gonna keep pushing it, and we regret that our Republican friends have opposed it. And then they realized, oh my God, why? Why didn't he just take his marbles and go home? He's coming back at us. He could come back at us with a standalone bill. And then somebody pointed out to these fine people, you do know that while you can gut that bill, you can't stop Warner from holding the hearing in the Senate and bring those witnesses in. You know.
Right. Exactly.
And they're going, we're really screwed. And then they panicked, and they decided to do something which they will never live down. Some idiot in the Department of Defense said, I know this issue very well. And let me tell you about 1969. You see, they had all kinds of problems. Blue Book is generating all this interest and everything, and that stuff was pouring in, and it was so irritating. And so we closed it all down. We got this Condon report signed by a professor who disgraced himself in his university, said there was nothing to it, used that, shut down Blue Book. Then we went and destroyed NICAP, and we're free, right? We've actually got 8 years of peace and quiet. And so let's do that again. We need a report. We'll call it the AARO study. We need somebody respectable to sign it. Let's get John Kirkpatrick, okay? And then we'll put that out there saying there's really nothing to this, and then things will go away. And that's exactly what they did. How they got Kirkpatrick to sign that, I do not know. He was mad. He needed a job. There's a lot of ways they could have intimidated him. And I'm not going to speak for the man. I don't know what he was dealing with, but I can imagine a lot of reasons why, if he hadn't played ball with them, it could have been really bad for him and his family. And so consequently, he signed it. Yeah. And so that report gets put out. There's nothing to it. And of course, it gets ripped to pieces. It's a catastrophe. They lose another one, right? And so that is how that is unfolding. So now, okay, we not long after Schumer made his statement is when they held the hearing on Grush in the House. And so overall, we're having more wins as we move forward. And so they made a correct decision. Okay, we've got to get a new head of AARO. We can't screw with this. Yep. We're going to get Kirkpatrick had credentials. We're going to get a very credentialed, solid person. We're probably going to let him know it's okay, right? Eventually this is going to get resolved. Not too long. It's going to be okay. We're not going to hang you out to dry. And if that is the case, then that is another sign that overall the other side is basically ready to turn the king over and admit defeat. And so that's a positive. And they mentioned him. They mentioned him positively in the hearing, which I'm sure he was appreciative of. And another sign that we're still making progress.
This was brought up during the hearing, and we knew this before, but the AARO fund, my understanding, it was somewhere around like, I don't know, 20 million.
Sounds about right.
Something right.
But you know,
but we don't actually know the number. We don't really know the real number, right?
Well, I think that there was something about 22 million, and it was mentioned, and I haven't heard that it hasn't taken place. So I'm going to assume, barring other information, that they're going to get $22 million.
Yeah, I mean, so that was the thing. Yeah, I was thinking 22 million. The report that we got, the historical report, was not worth 22 million. But I think it was Nancy Mays or someone had said that there's no there's no line item sheet saying like, this is the funding, this is the money. We don't know where the money, how it was spent.
Good. Yeah. Well, that means that eventually they're going to have to come up with a line item sheet, because AARO is not a USAP.
There you go. Right. I mean, you would think, but then again, this is there's a long history of UFO obfuscation.
Past is not prologue.
But true enough. I've always appreciated your optimism, Steve. Like, honest to goodness.
What are the options?
Yes.
What are the options? I've been to the mountaintop.
Stay home,
I've
watch
seen
Netflix.
the other side, and we are all screwed. That's not
Yeah.
going to lead anybody anywhere.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, we're just gonna be stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
Well, we've got like a few minutes left. So do you have any last minute thoughts? Something that you really feel like you need to share?
Well, yeah. Look, there's a lot going on that needs support.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with the New Paradigm Institute, Danny Sheen's operation. They've gotten some decent funding, but they need millions more.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing a lot of projects. They are the leading activist organization now, newparadigminstitute.org. There's a lot you can join in there. Fine. If you happen to have a few million lying around, support it. But if you don't, but you went to school with somebody who does, get in touch with them, let them know. You want to support the Soul Foundation, the scientific think tank started at Stanford by Gary Nolan, or the UAP Disclosure Fund, the first 501c4 political nonprofit. So you can donate to that. They're going to try to influence the political arena in the post-disclosure world. These are basically post-disclosure institutions. They're really being entities. They're being set up primarily to service, but there's a little thing. There's some contributions they make to the disclosure process now. Mm-hmm. And then Paradigm Research Group, after 28 years as a one-man, well, basically a sole proprietorship, which I did in order to protect myself from government influence, mm-hmm. And should have converted a lot sooner, but it's been a wild, crazy ride. I am now a 501c3 nonprofit in Washington, D.C.
Okay, and that for everyone listening, that link is in the show description.
Yeah, paradigmresearchgroup.org. But I have to redesign the site to reflect what PRG is going to be in the post-disclosure world, which is educational think tank, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that are going to have to go, and I have to make some changes. I've got the donation module ready, and I can plug it in any time, and I better do it soon because I'm just about out of money. But I have several very substantial projects, including a new X conference that could be held in the National Press Club. But I need at least $20,000 to launch that because you can't reserve the ballroom at the press club unless you pay in advance. You get a cancellation schedule, but we ain't booking that weekend unless you pay now. And there's some other projects. So the Paradigm Research Group, check it out in a week or so, or maybe in a few days. And if you can support me, great. That would be fantastic. Beyond that, let's see. There's so much going on.
Well, I also just put in the chat. I put the newparadigminstitute.org website mm-hmm. as well. So both those websites are available to everybody listening. And I do want to say that, Steve, you've been around probably the longest UFO activist.
Oh,
political activist. Is that fair?
Well, actually, there really wasn't any well-defined activist, but Stephen Greer is a lot of what he does is absolutely activism. Understood. Without question. Yeah. And he actually enters the scene very late 80s, so he's got another 7-8 years on me.
But he does the CE5 stuff and all that jazz.
Well, but yeah, he also does activism. He does activism and a lot more. I can just do activism because Stephen Greer is King Midas compared to me. He's been well funded always, mm-hmm. and he's used that money well. So he does a lot of things, but he is an activist, and his activist goes back into the late 80s. I don't know of any activists operating now who goes back before then that it comes to mind.
Right. Okay. So everyone support Steve. Go to this website, sign up for the newsletter, whenever you get that donation thing set up, maybe consider doing that. I just think that, you deserve our support, Steve, because those of us who've been enthusiasts and researchers for all these years, you started way before us, and I think you might be going, well after us too.
We'll see about that. Now, one other organization I got to promote here, mm-hmm. Very important. One of my projects that I was able to do, I co-founded with Dan Harari, a publicist in Hollywood, the mm-hmm. Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org.
Yes, Dan Harari was on a couple weeks ago. Yeah,
this is another 501c3 nonprofit. Mm-hmm. It has up to 180 members now, divided into two groups: UAP members and Hollywood members. The UAP members are everybody dealing with this issue in all kinds of ways. And some of which do have skills in content created, but they're mostly UAP. And then the Hollywood members are professional content creators of every type, including stars, including an Oscar winner. And so why do we do that? we're trying to create a multi-networking operation. We don't make money from deals, but we make it possible for people to find each other and create deals, create content about this issue, because there's going to be an extraordinary demand for it. That's goal number one. Goal number two is to help ensure that the big shots in Hollywood that are creating content know and are encouraged to go talk to the people that know all the stuff. You know, I mean, I'm sure your line producer has read a UFO book or two, but there's people who have spent 20 years on this. If you're going to make a documentary, go talk to them and pay them well, okay?
Exactly. Well, yeah,
pay for their services. That has not been happening by and large.
No, it's not. And you and I you probably know people too, but oftentimes producers will reach out to a researcher, tease them into doing a show or something, get information out of them, and then they just leave them in the dust.
Yeah, let's just say we've been abused, but that's changing. And the Hollywood Disclosure Line is a very righteous organization. It's got a nice website, and at HollywoodDisclosureLine.org. And so we invite people to encourage that. If you feel you could be a founding member, let me know. If you know someone in the entertainment field who just happens to be a A-lister or something that you think is interested, suggest to them to check out the HDA, because you can never have too many A-listers in your alliance.
Fair enough.
Okay.
All right, Steve, thank you so much. I really appreciate the conversation, as always.
As always, Alan, you're a great guy. Anytime you need me, even a short notice, somebody drops out, you call me up. My job is to podcast.
Appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Take care. Okay. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. If you like this podcast and all the other Coffee and UFO episodes, please subscribe here on YouTube, comment down below, share your thoughts, and follow us and rate wherever you listen to podcasts. Really appreciate that organic growth. Every bit helps. Thanks to you. This podcast is rebroadcast on the UNX network. So special thanks to Margie K and Grace Hobbs over there. And until next time, everyone, peace and love, and see you on the flip side.